Well, it's time to resurrect this build, the Westland Widgeon, which was a model started by Roy's father many years ago, and I'm trying to keep as much of the model as his father built, which is mainly going to consist of the flying surfaces. The fuselage I've built and fiddled about, trying to get it ready. And Roy will be coming back from his long vacation very shortly, so I really need to push on with this. So let's get cracking and do some covering of the wings and the tail surfaces. Let's have a little look at the jobs that I've been working on with this lovely little model. Well, the first thing I had to do was make an undercarriage, and you can see that this is located with a tube here. I'm going to stitch it to this former, which has been reinforced, and the whole axle moves with the wheels glued to the axle. I've found that on these little models that helps them run true if you're taking them off from the ground, much more than if you have independently rotating wheels. Before Roy went on his little break, we established which of these two linear servos operated would operate the rudder and which one would operate the elevator. It's that long ago now, I forgot. But I've looked around and I've marked them. So this one here on this side is for the rudder and that one's for the elevator. Now, the model that the radio gear was cannibalised from, these were the push rods. And this makes me suspect that the model that it came from was a Proto Micro Aces model. It was a very early one, but they're too short. So I'm going to be using some carbon fibre. I'll take off carbon rod. I'll take off these parts that have been nicely bent up. I'll take them off and add them so that we can get the length, and then I can push on and cover this. You can see that the cockpits have been cut out. I still need to add a couple of magnets to hold that in place. And now it's a case of, there's one thing I've got to make. And there's a tiny little fin sits on the back here. On this part here, sits on the back. And because the rudder is so big, it's going to need to be secure. So I think I'm going to slot it into this rear part so that it's a bit more rigid. If it was just glued on there, I don't think it would take any sort of knock at all, or even the force of the push rod. So that's the first job I have to do with this, and then I think we'll get on to looking at some covering. So let's crack on, folks. Well, there's another fiddly job done. That's the push rods in place, crossed over, you'll notice, to give a nice run. Hopefully they're going to line up, but there is a bit of play possible because of the loop here. Right, let's crack on. I'm going to stitch on the undercarriage to these two formers here. There's another brace required on the other side, I've noticed. Whoops, I've noticed I need to do that. And then we'll get this covered. There's nothing to stop us now, so let's press on. Right, let's get the fuselage covered. Now, the normal procedure, and this is no different, is to start with the bottom first. I need to support this. Just wait a second. That's better. Now, one slight problem in the process of stitching the undercarriage onto here, I've pulled the leads out from the motor to the control board, and it's 2 pins into 3 holes. Now, if I've put them in the wrong place, what I'm going to experience... Okay then, let's get this covered. Slight problem in the process of stitching the undercarriage onto this former. I've managed to pull the lead out from the control board for the motor, 2 pins into 3 holes, and that means if I've put them in the wrong hole, the motor will be reversed. So I'm going to go for it, but there may be a chance that we'll have to cut this panel out and swap the pins over if I get it wrong. I've got a 50-50 chance of getting it right, let's be optimistic for once. So I'll cut this panel. I'm going to do one panel, two, just because it makes it easier around the undercarriage. And get the scissors, make a little nick for there, and a nick for there. I'll cut that to size. We'll get some glue along the edges, spray it, dampen it, and get it on. Let's get cracking. So, Pritt stick around the edge. A little bit over. Don't need to go crazy with this. It's just to hold it in place. Okay. Give the tissue a spray. Obviously away from the camera. Just to dampen it. And then line everything up. And then it's just a case of gently pulling everything into position. And I'm going to let that dry a little before I try to trim it, because if I don't, I think it'll just rip the tissue. It's not bad tissue, this, actually. I mean, I'll put the other light on. Hopefully that's a bit better. It's not bad tissue at all. I've had a lot worse, but when it's damp, see if I can get a little nick in here. Yeah, that's okay, just about. Yeah, just about works. Yeah, if some tissue's so poor that even the slightest touch rips it. This is, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10. It's what came with the kit, and that's what I'm using. So we'll let that dry. I'll trim it off, and then we'll do the front panel and the sides. Here we go then. Well, let's get some covering done. I've got some tissue here that came with the kit. I'll cut a panel out for the lower wing. I've got a new blade in here, so should make light work of this. There we go. Now, there's a couple of possible approaches to this. I can either use a Pritt stick, which I think I may use, or you can actually coat the underside with dope along the edge and then use thinners to reattach, but let's try it with a Pritt stick first. So it's just common garden stuff. Be careful when you're pressing it on. You don't need loads on. It's just enough to adhere the tissue, and I'm only going around the outside. You don't need to do individual ribs, unless of course they're under cambered, then you would, but I don't know if I would use a Pritt stick for that. I think I would probably use dope. Now, this is where we see how good this tissue is. I've got an atomizer, just a spray bottle that produces a very fine mist, and I'm going to spray this. I'm doing it off, actually, let's do it here so you can see. So I'm going to hold it and get it damp. If the tissue's poor quality, it normally disintegrates in your hands, but let's see if we can do this. I'm going to lay it on. work it and sort of put a little bit of tension on it. Well, this is handling rather nicely actually, so I think it's on the better quality range as tissues go. I have had tissue like this just literally fall apart in my hands as I'm misting it. Give it an additional mist there. Now the idea of this of course is that you pull it taut and glue it down, and then when it dries out you've got a taut, tensioned up covering. There you go. Now what I'm going to do is let that dry out. I'm just holding it down while I do so, because you don't want to induce any sort of warps into the model at all. There you go. Let that dry out, and then I'll trim off the surplus, fold it over and do the top panel. There you go. That was easy. Let's see what happens next. One side covered. You can see it's gone taut. There's not a lot of strength in these wings, but that'll come once the covering's complete. So the top panel, I'm going to do it in two parts. There's a tip here, and it would be very difficult to form the tissue around the tip. It's unlike solar tex or solar film, which you can pull and stretch. You can't stretch tissue. So there'll be one panel on the end and one panel for the main wing. So I'll do the main wing first and then the end tip panel. Okay, that's the bottom panel done. I'm about to try and do the top panel, and I'm going to try and do it in one piece, but there's a risk on this tip because you can't stretch tissue to a great extent, obviously, unlike solar film or solar tex. But I'm going to try it and we'll see how it works out. Pritt stick round the edge. Notice I'm not going crazy with this, but I will put a little bit on the underside because there'll be a certain degree of wrapping. It's very delicate, this sort of work, after working with quarter scale DR1s and such, but it's a change, isn't it? And that's the attraction. Right, there we go. Once again, I'm going to mist the tissue. Just got to find where, there it is, where I've put this. I'll do it off camera so I don't get the workbench soaked. That'll do. And simply lay it over the surface. Once you get it down, it starts to stick, and then you simply work it, putting a very slight pull on it, nothing excessive. I might just get away with this, you know. Yeah, in one piece, that's great. You've got to work very carefully with this. And then be patient, let it dry. So let that dry, And then we'll trim it and fold it over and we'll be ready for the next stage. You can see here now that it's dried out. I've held it down with some weight. Now there are two schools of thought regarding that. One is to do this when you dope it as well. And the other is actually let it dry naturally, and if there's any warps that are induced in it, you twist them out afterwards. But anyway, I've held it down and you can see we've got a nice finish on that wing. Now the next stage is to apply a very thin down dope, and for that I'm going to use this sponge. And when it comes to actually doping it, it's advantageous to actually hold it and dope it that way so that you don't get any drips dripping through. Now I've got some thin down, very thin down dope here, and it's not really a job for indoors, to be quite honest with you, but it's throwing it down outside. It's horrible weather, so I'm going to do it anyway. So I'm going to give this a quick coat. Actually, I've just realised that's a little bit thicker than I would like it, so I'm going to thin it down. Just bear with me. Right, here we go. Thin down. The advantage of using a sponge is that it naturally pulls out some of the surplus dope that you're applying. I'm turning it over, as you can see. And when it's thinned down like this, it goes a long way. We don't want to thicken it on. There we go. So it won't take long that to dry at all. It'll dry very quickly. I'm just going to balance it like that for the moment. And there you go. One wing panel done. I'll crack on, do the other one. I haven't decided whether I'm going to give it a light flash of silver over the top only. I think I will. It's all adding to the weight of the model, but what the heck. I'm sure it'll be all right. One panel done. Time to crack on and do the other one. Repeat the process. Well, there you go. That's the wings completed. They've had one coat of thin down dope, and quite frankly I think that's enough. We don't need any more than that. It's only going to probably ever fly indoors other than a test flight. After that, I don't know if Roy will keep it, hang it up or what, but there you go, wings done. Centre section to do. Finish that off, and then I think next thing I'll do is I'll put the dihedral angle in, and these are simply glued in place. There's no dihedral brace on them, but I think that'll be fine. I'll have to just make sure we've got a nice surface to adhere it to, and put the dihedral angle on, and they'll be glued in place. So the process has started now. I had thought about spraying the upper surface silver. I honestly don't think I'm going to bother. I'm going to leave them like that. There's some couple of nice water slides that were included in the kit. They're really big and they'll make this pop. So I think I'll leave it at that. Anyway, let's crack on. Covering's now complete. All the parts are basically there. And in the next video, because I think I'll call this this one to a close, we're going to start rigging it all up. How I'm going to do that, I'm not sure. I may be spraying this red. We'll see. I'll have a little think about that. I think I'll leave the wings and the tail surfaces as are, because the nice transfers that come with the kit will give it enough colour, I think. But there you go. Job's a good one. Hope you've enjoyed that. If you have, please give it a thumbs up and stay tuned for the next adventure. A little bit ridiculous, isn't it? The stuff in here. Dear me. How I get away with it, I don't know. Anyway, stay tuned, folks. More to come.